Hello, Soraya. How's it going?
It is good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we're at another compilation album. We've already talked about a couple of them.
Yeah, but this one I think is really kind of a sentimental favorite for
Hmm,
many of us.
interesting. And
And
go ahead.
for some of the bands that we've covered, there's definitely a connection.
Yes. And I wanted to also say it's kind of like a series within a series, right? So it's kind of like a sub series. We'll talk about that once we get
Sounds good.
let's get the other two on the call.
Sounds great. Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme,
A podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tune.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a grooviar.
Let's get groovy. Let's get Howie and Joy on the call.
Yes. Who is it? Hello. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Hello.
Yay, the gang is back.
Woo! It's a pajama party. P-A-J-A-M-A. Sorry, had to.
All right. Soraya, we were talking at the beginning before we called Joy and Howie about this being a series within a series or a sub-series.
This is like a marathon that we're trying to do today, but an important one.
Yes, I would agree. So what is the compilation or compilations that we're covering?
All right, so hold on to your hats, folks. We, the fabulous four right here, the Paisley pals right here, we're going to go through and talk about the Rodney on the Rock compilation series, volumes 1 through 3.
All of them?
You're damn right.
It takes us an hour and a half to get through one album.
We don't go half-ass. We go whole.
We go whole ass.
We go whole ass. Whole ass.
J-Lo.
It sounds scary, but every Rodney on the Rock featured song is always under 2 minutes long, so we can get through it.
We can do
I
this.
think so.
All right.
Rodney was futuristic in that sense. He knew four people were going to be talking about it. He said, "Boom, we're going to keep it nice and sweet."
So for those who don't know, who is Rodney? We've talked about him here and there on our podcast before, but
Why, he's the mayor of the Sunset Strip, Hefe.
yes, indeed.
So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Rodney Bingenheimer, I just want to. It's really hard to synthesize talking about Rodney Bingenheimer and his impact on music and a lot of the groups that we've talked about on this show, but I'm going to do my best. So Rodney Bingenheimer is really kind of this jack of all trades, but what he's known for here in the Southern California area and his connection to the Paisley Underground bands is really strong. He was a DJ here in Southern California on a radio station called K-Rock 106.7. And when Rodney was given his show, Rodney had lived overseas. He had come back. He had started a disco here on the Sunset Strip. And he had, been an intern at Mercury Records. He had been a publicist for Sonny and Cher. He had connections with a lot of people, but he was really plugged into the music scene. And one of the best things I read about him is during his time at Mercury Records, he was driving David Bowie around LA and showing him around LA. And that image in my head, I'm like, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall.
Wow.
But anyways, so Rodney, when he came back, motivated by David Bowie, by the way, to come back and start this disco, he was really plugged into the English scene, and he brought back with him, or at least introduced LA to the glam scene. And then when he gets his job at K-Rock for the show in 1976, he begins playing the things that he liked to hear and kind of plugging into that LA radio scene and listeners, things that he liked to hear, and bands started dropping off singles for him to play, cassettes, 45s, things like that. But the value of Rodney Bingenheimer to the LA music scene in the 80s is he helped introduce punk, glam, new wave into all of our ears and into the music scene, and he gave a voice. He seemed to really enjoy giving a voice to new bands. Someone called him, in one of the articles I read, the kingmaker of new artists. And when we look back at these 3 volumes, I think that really kind of sticks. Rodney is someone really special to this 80s music scene and moved on. He brought his influence in that scene is really notable. And so many bands, Jeff, we've interviewed so many different people from the Paisley Underground who said, we gave Rodney a single and he went ahead and played it that day. And there are a lot of bands that had that story of, we walked out of the studio, they said, go knock on the door, give it to Rodney, and all of a sudden they had turned on the radio and the song was being played.
Wow.
So these compilations, I think they capture a moment in time in the LA music scene where a lot of innovation was happening. And so this is why I say it's a sentimental favorite, because it connects a lot of us, but also there's a lot of great music on these too.
Absolutely. And what we decided to do was to break each compilation up, so each one of us would take on talking about the track listing for each compilation. And we kind of did it based on what our picks were, which nicely ended up where 3 of us picked tracks from 3 different compilations, so they're all covered. And Joy, your pick was from Volume 1. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that album and what's on it?
Okay, well, just to piggyback a little bit about what Soraya was saying is that, Rodney's show was on Sunday nights when it first started, and for years and years and years until they got snarky over at K-Rock, was from 8 to 11 p.m. on Sundays. And that is where you could go and see what was happening in the music world. Otherwise, if you turn on the radio, it was all like album-oriented rock and this and that. And this is where you could really see what was happening. And if, you were somebody who liked to go out and see shows and stuff, it gave you an idea of who you wanted to see because he played local bands. And so you knew that you would be able to go out and catch these bands. So, I picked Volume 1 because this was sort of the beginning of it all, and you're right, Sarai, he did play what he liked. So you might hear the Monkees, and then you might hear Black Flag, and then you could hear maybe, the Seeds, wow. And then you would hear Agent Orange. And so, that was why his stuff was so important. There wasn't a program director telling him what he had to play. He just literally, like you said, played what he liked. And so this came out, they all came out, in fact, many compilations came out on Posh Boy Records. And the founder of Posh Boy is a guy named Robbie Fields. There were all kinds of bands coming out of the LA area, but he decided there was a lot of untapped music down in the OC that deserved, a listen. And so what he did is he would go and mine the backyard parties. Wow. Down in Huntington Beach and all the beach cities down there, and trying to find the next big thing. And so that's what he did. And then he would present these things to Rodney. Rodney would play them, and it just sort of took off from there. So with that one being the very first Volume 1, that's kind of started it all. That's kind of why I have an affinity for it. The other thing is that so many in the punk movement, it was all LA, LA, LA. And there was really kind of a disparaging reputation, not just because the Huntington Beach scene got so rough, toward the end, but because it was disrespected to be from the Orange County, from behind the orange curtain, which is, I live in Orange County now and I still use that term. Wow. But, he was willing to play the Orange County bands. And so that's what was really cool. Awesome. So the album starts off with just a Brooke Shields tag that she used to come on and do for his show. And so they put it on the album to start it off. And, you know, my first thought was, why her? But he was friends with the Shields family, and they're New York based because she was modeling and everything at the time, very young. And so when she would come out here, he would accompany her around, and she actually liked K-Rock and did this, you know, promo or this little tag for them. And then when they asked if she, you know, would give permission for them to use it on a compilation, they said, sure, free and clear, no nothing. And this was a time where she was getting, you know, millions from the jean companies to model her jeans. And so she gave it to him for free. And I guess, you know, they're still like friendly to this day. But anyway, after that, it goes right into Agent Orange Bloodstains. And it's like all the niceties are over. And it's notable that, you know, this is one of Rocket Man's favorites.
Nice.
And they say that the best version of it is on this album.
Cool.
From Agent Orange. My pick was the third track, which is Amoeba by the Adolescents. It was one that transcended just Rodney's show and got play on K-Rock in general. You could hear it anytime throughout the day. That one was recorded in, I think, November of 1980. It was included on the compilation, which led to a signing with Frontier Records.
Ooh.
They signed them in January of 81 and cranked out their first album. They call it the Blue album, or, you know, their namesake, the Adolescent album. I think in April, in like 4 months, they cranked out that, you know, you crank out the album quickly because you have 2-minute songs. Everything's done really quick. But anyway, I was like sort of attracted to that song, not just because for obvious reasons I liked it, but because they were Fullerton guys. And I didn't live in Orange County at the time, but I grew up in Covina, which was just over the hill. If you went to the beach, taking Beach Boulevard, you know, you weren't too far. And they were, you know, considered kind of local for me. And I really liked that they were being played on the radio. So at that point, it was Steve Soto on bass, Tony Cadena, also known as Tony Reflex, also known as Tony Adolescent. And there's a few other AKAs there. And the Agnew brothers, take your pick. I think it was Rick for this one, playing guitar. And it was the first hardcore punk album to get nationwide play, distributed nationwide. The only other one that did that was Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, which is the Dead Kennedys. Yeah. So anyway, that's my pick, Amoeba by the Adolescents.
They never died. How can this fall my code? I've never seen anything
So other Posh Boy artists that are on this would be Black Flag, super popular at my high school, believe it or not, with a small crowd, okay, but super popular. Circle Jerks, Agent Orange, and Social D, who's not on this album, but has a connection with the Adolescents, Kids at the Black Hole. The Black Hole was actually Mike Ness's apartment here in Fullerton. So
Interesting.
many stories there that, you know, we can't share during family hour. But anyway, worth trying to find if you can. And a couple obscure things on here. Rick Elric was interesting to me because he's from Covina. I've seen him in a front yard in the middle of the day drinking, when everyone's supposed to be at high school, you know, him playing, and and some of these people, and the crowd is on this album too. They open up side 2. They're still playing. And a lot of these bands can be found on the other Posh Boy compilation, which is Beach Boulevard. Nice. So if you can find that, I would say get that. There's Simple Tones, Rick Elric, The Crowd, just another great one. So check this one out, get a taste of it. This is where it began.
Nice. So the first one came out in 1980 on Posh Boy. Yeah, and I think there was a couple reissues in the early to mid 80s on LP only, or maybe cassette.
LP.
But that never came out on CD as itself, that version. A year later, 1981, is when they released Volume 2, and that's the one that I'm going to be talking about. So just going through the tracks real quick. It starts off with a song called Rodney on the Rock. So it's like a little theme song from a band called Target 13. And when I looked them up, all they had was a 7-inch single, and it was the Rodney on the Rock song with something else on side 2. That was pretty cool. Then Joy mentioned Social D, Social Distortion, and they had a song 1945, which was also released as a single that came out in 1982 on a label called 13th Floor Records. So that was pretty cool. So I'm guessing it's probably before they really took off. And probably a lot of these bands were actually before they ended up taking off. The third song, Shattered Faith, song's called Right Is Right. Then Rise Above by Black Flag. So Black Flag was on the Volume 1 as well, and then again here. And Rise Above was the title track for the Black Flag's debut album, Damaged, that came out in 1981 on SST. Different version, I believe, but that's cool.
That's my favorite Black Flag song.
It's a great song. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. Next up, the Minutemen, and the song is Search. There's a version of that on the first Minutemen album on SST, on their album, The Punchline. I believe it's the opening track too, so that's pretty cool. And then Red Cross, spelled out like the
relief entity.
Yeah, exactly. REDCROSS before they changed the spelling of it. And Burnout is the song that's on here, and that ends up on their debut album, Born Innocent. So some of these songs end up on these bands' albums. Not the case with the next song, Channel 3, one of my favorite bands. I really like these guys. This track, You Lie, is only, to my knowledge, only on this album. And their early records are so punky, so much energy, but you could sing along with them. But later, I remember, I think they got a little hair metal-ish, if I'm not too mistaken, in the later part of the 80s. But some of the early stuff is really, really good. Next up is Agent Orange, that you mentioned. Rocket Man likes that song, or likes that band, rather. And the song on this album is Mr. Moto. And I have a little bit of information about it. So Mr. Moto was originally released in 1962 from the band The Bel Airs. So it's a cover. And it was on the RV label based out of Hollywood, that label that started in the late 50s. And they did a lot of surf music. The Bel Airs song, Mr. Moto, was one of them. And I thought it was pretty cool because the song was co-written by their drummer, Richard Delvey, and their guitarist Paul Johnson. Agent Orange did a version of it. It's on here, and it's also on their 1986 Posh Boy release, Bitchin' Summer, a 4-song EP that has two other surf instrumentals, Pipeline and Miserlou. Those are both great. And one original, Breakdown. Their version of Mr. Moto can also be found on the CD version of their debut, Living in Darkness, but it wasn't on the LP. But when the CD was released, they added the EP as bonus material, which is pretty cool. Agent Orange, the band was originally a trio with Mike Palm, the main guy, the guitarist and vocalist, Scott Miller on drums, not the Scott Miller, not Game Theory Scott Miller. And then, Joy, you mentioned Steve Soto. He started out with Agent Orange and then went on to form Adolescence. So
He sure did.
that was a cool tie, yeah. And he was replaced by James Levesque, who is with the band on this song right here. My favorite record by Agent Orange is their 1983 Enigma release, When You Least Expect It. That's my favorite EP. But on here we have Mr. Moto, so let's give it a listen. Alright, so that was Agent Orange, Mr. Moto. A little bit punkier than the original version from 1962. So,
I love that. I love me a good, like, punked up instrumental like that.
Me too. Yeah, they did the same thing with Miserlou and Pipeline. And I think some other songs on other albums too, but those are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Rounding out side one is the Red Rockers with Dead Heroes. That song ended up on their debut album, Condition Red. Do you guys remember Red Rockers? They had that song China that was on MTV all the time.
Yeah.
China, China.
I think
whatever.
we have that somewhere
Yeah.
in our section.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on MTV all the time. But this song is Dead Heroes. Side 2 starts with Unit 3 with Venus, BOYS. And I remember Lena talking with us when her band, Peer Group, was playing at a show that this 13-year-old girl was came on after them or sometime on the same event that they were playing at, and she said it was very interesting opening up for a 13-year-old girl. So that was Unit 3 with Venus. So she's on here. Stepmothers, Where's the Dream? And then Gleaming Spires, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls?
Yep.
So there's 3 songs on Volume 2 that end up on the Best of Rodney on the Rock, which is a CD compilation. It was the song 1945 by Social Distortion, the Red Rocker song Dead Heroes, and this song, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls? And let me read the little excerpt that's from the CD booklet. It says, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls is a song Rodney declared a hit the first time he heard it, and it was Rodney who forced the record company to hand it over to him for inclusion on Volume 2. The song was produced by then unknown producer Stephen Hague, or Seven Hague. Some of you may know him as the producer of Pet Shop Boys and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, or OMD, among other groups. Currently, their drummer, the drummer of the Gleaming Spires, David Kendrick, is now a member of Devo, which I thought was pretty cool. And another thing about the Gleaming Spires, they started off as two main guys, David Kendrick and Leslie Boehm. Those are the main guys on this song, but later they got a larger band. They were the backing band for Sparks for the early 80s albums, Womp That Sucker, Angst in My Pants, and the Outer Space album, In Outer Space. And I went to see Sparks at Magic Mountain when they had those shows at Magic Mountain.
Oh, I loved those.
And Jane Whelan came out, and because Cool Places was a hit by then, and sang the song with them. And the Gleaming Spires were the backup band for that show that I saw at Magic Mountain. So I thought that was pretty cool. Rounding out,
we must have been at the same show.
Were
I remember that show.
Yeah, in that little shell that they had. Yeah. And rounding out the album, the Earthquake song by Little Girls, Levi and the Rockettes, the song is Room to Rock. Twisted Roots, Snaked. Twisted Roots had a couple of Black Flag members at one point. Kira and Des Cardina were in Twisted Roots. I don't know if they were played on this song. The last song on the album is Geza X, and the song is We Need More Power. So that's Volume 2, and that's 1981. So the next year, Volume 3. Howie, what do you have for us for Volume 3?
So Volume 3 came out December 1982. So right at the end of the year, 82. And kind of go through the track listing here to start out. And it's similar to Volume 2, where it's a lot punkier on the first side. The A side tends to be pretty much all punk bands. And then side 2 gets more into pop and new wave tracks, which was one of the things I always thought was really cool about Rodney. Is just he played so many different kinds of music. I just loved that. You weren't locked into one genre. So it starts off with Kent State with Radio Moscow. So just get right into it there. Then depending on which version of the album you have, the next song is Vandals with Urban Struggle. I don't have that version because they put this album out like I don't know how much later, just a little bit later, and there's 2 tracks missing from the second version of this album that came out. So that song is not on the second album or the second release of this album. Then it goes into Ill Repute with Clean Cut American Kid, which is just a fantastic song.
Love that song.
The Jodie Foster's Army with Preppy. Channel 3 with Separate Peace. Catch 22 with Stop the Cycle, which is another really cool song. I love that one. Pariah with Up to Us. Red Scare with Street Life. And then No Crisis with She's Into the Scene. It's a lot of songs. I mean, it's 9 songs on one side of the album there, which is it's a whole lot of songs for one side of an LP.
Yeah.
So then you flip over. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more. There's 10 songs. Forgot Rudy with Crimson at the end of side 1 there. So then you get onto the B side and you get right into the fun poppy stuff with Unit 3 with Venus again, with Pajama Party. And then next up is my track. So I kind of had to do this because I am a big Bengals fan. They were my gateway drug to the Paisley Underground. And so here they are with Bitchin' Summer Speedway on this album. And this is like really, really early. This is when they were still the Bangs that recorded this. I don't think Annette was with the band when they did this. I'm pretty sure she wasn't. So they were just a trio. And this song was written by Susanna Hoffs and David Roback when they were in the Unconscious together.
Oh.
So that's kind of cool. So it's not really a Bangle song. It came from her Sue and David's earlier band, which wasn't very long. They weren't together very long. But then when Sue got together with Vicky and Debbie, brought this song with her, and they recorded it and gave it to Rodney, and it's on the album. And then one of the cool things about these albums is you get a flip side magazine with it too. And there's the Bangles on the cover there with Rodney. And then there's a great interview inside where they're listed as the Bangs. And they've got Annette in there too, and Vicky and Debbie and Sue. And they talk about the name change and finding out there's another band called the Bangs, so they had to change their name. So, but it's really cool. It's not like any other Bengal song because it's like a surf rock. It's a surf rock song.
Yeah.
And it's just so different, but I love it. So here's the Bangs with Bitchin' Summer Speedway.
You sure that wasn't Eternal Flame?
That was an early version of Walk Like an Egyptian.
For anyone who is just like thinks of the Bengals as Eternal Flame or as David Roback as Mazzy Star, man, they've got to hear that song and broaden their horizons there. It's so great. I've heard, I read that was Vicky's favorite Bengals song. So I'm not sure if that's true, but I could totally see that.
Do we know of any other recorded songs that were co-written by Susanna Hoffs and David Roback? I can't think of any.
I can't think of any.
That's very cool. Super cool.
That'll be a question for when we talk to Sue Hoffs.
Yeah,
that's my unicorn episode.
That'll happen.
I think I should stop on the track list there.
Okay.
Okay. So, with 4 people, 3 albums, 1 album is going to get extra love.
Right.
And volume 3 is, for me, it's my favorite of the 3. So, picking up from where Howie left off at side B, track 2, The Bangles with Bitchin' Summer. Then we hit my pick, but let me go through the rest of the tracks. So, track 3 is Action Now with the song Try. Track 4 is Signals with Gotta Let Go. Then track 5 is Gail Welch with Day of Age, and that is the song I played over and over and over. I just love the arrangement of that. Then track 6, radio music with. Now, this is one of those tracks that if you've got one pressing, it's there, and then another pressing doesn't have it, but it's listed erroneously as being there. But then if you try and listen to it, like somebody has the whole album up on YouTube, and you're like, hey, where's that song? No. So unless you have the LP, you ain't hear that song. Track 6 is listed as radio music, Johnny Angel / New Dance. And then it ends with this epic playing of track 7 is David Hines' Land of a Thousand Dances. And that track goes on forever. I mean, it is the longest version of this song, but it is a badass song. And I remember I was a freshman in high school, Catholic all-girls high school in the Valley. And that was what I was listening to on a copy I made at home, walking to school in, my broke-ass Walkman that wasn't a Sony Walkman, but you know what I'm talking about. And I could listen to that song, and that was my gateway drug to like Wilson Pickett, to a bunch of R&B and soul. But I want to go back to Action Now. Action Now is a really good group that was here for a moment. And one of the trippiest things about this is a quote in a really long bio that's on Avebury Records. And the quote is this: the song, Try, disappeared from Rodney's playlist after a single play. Came and went. So it's like preserved in time. Isn't it weird?
That is my favorite track on the whole album.
And it's a fantastic song. So this lineup is Paula Pierce, Jim Schuster, Mike Lawrence, and Scott Hillman. The co-write credit is to Paula Pierce and Don Williams, who was managing them at the time. And this is kind of like an interesting song because I think most of us think of Paula Pierce with other projects, especially the Pandoras. And so this song gets on this compilation. They play a few more shows. So the album comes out in 82. They play a show at Cal Poly Pomona in January of 83. Everybody says this is like the show, their most kick-ass show. Right after that show, Paula Pierce leaves. Tries to take someone with her. They go, nope. And she moves on to create the Pandoras with Gwen Con.
Wow.
And so you go, this is a moment in time. Here's this really interesting artist in Paula Pierce. And I mean, the band goes on. The action now continues. But I just find it interesting. We've got this really great song. Yeah. And Paula Pierce then goes on and takes her influences and desires elsewhere and, begins other projects. So my track, right after Howie's Kick-Ass Bitchin' Summer, Action Now, Try.
Try.
And then Jeff, can I just add a couple of final notes?
Of course.
Just about these compilations. So, so these 3 volumes get released, and then there's kind of a moment where there's a lag. But so volume 1 does get released on cassette in 81. So does volume 2. There is a cassette release. And then we've got to wait until 1989. And then there's the best of Rodney on the Rock, which is kind of culls from the 3. Also includes depending on which pressing you had, there were songs that appeared on the first pressing or the second pressing. Released on cassette, so it's released on cassette in 89, released on CD in 92. And that one, the best of Rodney on the Rock, is the one that's available on digital streaming services. So you can find it on iTunes and other places. So, but really, go to Discogs and you're going to see that volume 1. You ain't going to find it. I think the cheapest that I found, and I just went to go look, was $29.99. And so, it's an important album, I think, and especially if you're a fan of Rodney's show. And also to note, so Rodney was on K-Rock, had this Sunday show, 3 hours, and it was kick-ass since August of 76. In June of 2017, the management and ownership of K-Rock changes, and he's let go. No one could believe it. And in an article I read, the management had wanted to get rid of him. And an employee was quoted as saying, no one has the guts to fire him because he's the soul of K-Rock. And if you think about it, how important he was to K-Rock and how important he was to the music scene here, absolutely that's true. So he loses his job in June, outrage. In July, he gets signed to a show on Sirius XM through Little Steven's Underground Garage. And he's got his own show. And again, now that he's on satellite radio, his playlists pop up and, they get circulated often. Go take a look. Those playlists are insanity because it's everything. It's new bands, old bands, 60s bands, mod bands, punk, it's everything. But again, Rodney is still cultivating the lists and the music that he likes and sharing it with people, and people are appreciating it. And FYI, now that we're in coronavirus, Sirius XM is free to stream online until the end of May.
What?
So, yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. It's something they're offering people. So you can stream it through
laptop.
Through the web. And but it's a great little treat. And if you've been missing Rodney, this is the time to do it. Until the end of May, you can do it for free without having a subscription.
I'm going to do it.
Time. Yeah. So.
Awesome. So you guys.
Good as ever.
You guys, we've gotten lots of requests for other compilations to cover. So we had decided on taking a break after these 3, but we'll have to reconvene and talk amongst us and see if we want to address some others. But we've gotten requests to talk about some other compilations. But for now, Soraya, we were talking about taking a break and going back to our discussion about David Roback and seeing if we can find out some more about this guy. So we'll take a little break and then discuss other compilations and see if you guys are interested in coming back to talk.
Alrighty.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
How do we do, Jeff? Are we at that 45-minute mark? That'll make Pat happy?
Pat happy?
Yes, yeah, we're right at 50. So
Big Daddy Pat. We got to make him happy.
We do indeed. We do indeed. Well, for the first 3, it was so fun having you guys on. Man, all the information that you guys brought to us, and then the songs, it's been great. But we'll have to do this again for sure.
Thanks for asking me.
I'm here. Thank you.
All right, you guys. Well, we'll talk to you guys later. Hopefully on another show soon.
Thank you. All right, Jeff, should we just end this?
We should.
All right, gente, hágalo bien.
Groove on, Paisley people. Howie, Joy, any going away messages?
Stay safe.
Yep. Stay home, stay safe.
Howie, when you were reading the songs from side 1 from volume 3, every single one of those choruses were coming up in my head as you were reading the titles. I'm thinking, "You're a preppy, that's a fact." All those songs were just instantly popping into my head. They're so catchy.
Clean Cut American Kid, when I listen to it, that's in my head for the rest of the day.
Well, it's been my problem today because I listened to that volume this morning, and oh my God, all day long.
Which one did you listen to today? Volume 1?
3.
3. 3 is so kick-assy. I like them all.
Clean Cut American Kid. That's one that's like stuck in my head. I'm like pushing the cart in Costco, like
Clean Cut American Kid. Whoa.
Exactly.
It is the ultimate earworm.
Yeah.
You know what I found interesting when I was looking up a little bit about Rodney and all that is that how he plays what he likes, and he and how he's been responsible for a lot of these careers that like especially the punk guys, but he actually played Van Halen a year before their first album even came out.
Really?
Yeah, well, they were a Pasadena band, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
I didn't know that.
There's a lot of those stories. It's really, really interesting.
This is Brooke Shields, and I got my radio station on for Rodney on the Rock.
It's real life.
I want to see everybody in real life.
I don't know. Do you want to log out and try, and we'll try calling you back?
Yes.
Okay.
You try that. Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.